Hello, good morning, everyone. All right. Good morning, everyone. Going to kick things off in just a minute. Just doing some full stack coding today, keeping it simple. Today is my youngest birthday. My oldest just went off to college. So, feeling some emotions, some happy times, but also sad but proud times as well. So, going to just code a simple CRUD app before I get my day going and carry on with festivities. Yes, let me know if you can hear me now. I needed a few minutes to jump in and get everything set up, but you should be able to hear me without an issue right now. Just let me know if you can't. All right, just building a quick little CRUD app. May do some styling. Ultimately, what this is I'm building a kid tracker and I'm working on the UI of that application right now. And I kind of have it in a pretty decent space. I'll show it to you just so you can kind of have a visual of what I am ultimately building. Give me just a second. Yep, good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Happy Saturday. Yep, just a quick CRUD app today, but I do want you to see what it looks like so far, the UI. But I haven't built the actual CRUD capability just yet. So I'm going to show you the UI for right now, and then we'll build the CRUD, and we may build some of the user interface, and I may just continue to build this along in this environment in the live space versus trying to record it. Was trying to record a video with it and was having some issues, and I know it's because of my computer. I need to get a new one, but not going to worry about it just yet. But in the meantime, where there's a will, there's a way. We'll just live code to demonstrate what we're building, and I'll worry about making it a video and all that good stuff later on. But let me show you the user interface. I'm pulling it up right now so you can see what that looks like. One second, I think I have it here. So here's the user interface of the application. It's basically, like I said, a simple CRUD app. We'll be able to see the amount of children that we have keyed into the application. We'll see the events that we have for today, the average grade of all of the students that we have within the app, how many open items we may have, and here are the names of the students. And we have I don't think I built this route yet. Nope, I sure haven't. But we have a daily view of our calendar. We can see what events we have scheduled. And I'm going to fix this a little bit here. Here the list of the children that we have, as in all children or all students. And then our events for the day. So today, well, yesterday, tomorrow is August 10th, but today is August 9th. And so you could toggle between the calendar and see what events you may have listed. Here we're seeing the actual kids that are within the application and how they're doing. Their fifth grade, room 201, grade average 92.6%. And the next class that's scheduled is 10:30 a.m. Don't know if I have the route built for this individual view. Yep, I do. So here's what the single student route will look like. And as you can see, we have it under the route as students, and the ID is CI. This is just mock data not being pulled from a database just yet. But here's the student name, the classes you're enrolled in, the recent grades, upcoming events, and a quick at a glance, just some personal information of the student. So this is the user interface of the application that we're building. But I haven't built the CRUD functionality, so we're going to work on some of that CRUD functionality this morning. And as a matter of fact, we'll go ahead and jump in and get started. So to kind of follow along, I'm using a virtual desktop with gitpod. That's what you see here. So the quickest way to get this up and going is to create a repo. Now you don't have to follow this exact same model that I'm doing. I'm doing this for personal reasons due to my laptop not being in the best shape to kind of hold a lot of these files and folders just yet. But let me see something, make sure. We'll close that out. No, this is looking a little off. Hold on. We can get rid of this one. Yep. Hold on. Sorry about that. I just realized it looks a little funky. There we go. All right. So we'll start by creating a repo that we're going to import into gitpod. Name the repo whatever you want. I'm just going to name it live kid tracker. We don't need a description. We can keep the configuration as it is with default, but you're more than welcome to make this public or private based on your personal preference. We don't need to add a readme file, a git ignore, and any license. We just need a simple, plain repo. So we'll just click create. And from there, it'll redirect us to the individual kid repo page. And now what we'll do is, if you're using gitpod, a virtual IDE versus installing this directly on my desktop, I'm using this instead. You just type in the name of that repo. It's real time. It's going to see it immediately. Live kid tracker. I'm using VS Code, the standard version that is within the environment. And I'm going to keep the default CPU with 4 cores, 8 gigs of RAM, and a 30 gig storage, which is going to be more than enough for what we're doing today. So with that, we'll just go ahead and click continue. As you can see, it is preparing the project. And then now we have a text editor, but it is in a virtual space. Notice the URL, and it asks if we want to open it on the desktop. And as I mentioned, I'm not going to worry about setting this up on my desktop. But we are ready to create a Next.js application. So we'll head over to the documentation, Next.js docs. The latest version is 15.4.6. And this is the command to get it up and going. So we'll just copy it. And I think we have to allow the ability to paste. I want to install this in the directory that is currently listed here. So I'll add a space and a dot and press enter. For the project, I'm going to make this bigger. Hopefully this helps. We'll hit OK. We will be using TypeScript. Let me just give me a second, make that a little easier to see. All right, so for the project, we will be using TypeScript. We'll say yes to ESLint, yes to Tailwind, no to the SRC directory, yes to the app router, yes to the turbo pack, no to the import alias, and we'll press enter. We'll give it a few seconds to finish setting the project up. Hey, good morning. Let me know if you can hear me now. It should be working. Thank you for stopping by and leaving some feedback. Just building a simple CRUD app for the student tracker website that I displayed just a moment ago. Yes, that's correct. And the repo will be available if you'd like to utilize it at a later point, but it'll be available directly after the video. Absolutely. Yeah, so we're going to jump in and get started here in just a moment. I'm just getting everything set up. All right, so with the project installed, let's go into our directory and we'll notice that we have the latest version of a Next.js application. The app directory is where we'll spend most of our time. Notice we have node modules listed here, but they're kind of a gray color. Uh-oh. Is it any better now? Let me know. Good morning, fellas. Hey, good morning, my brother. Let me know if you can hear it any better now. Sorry about the trouble there. Is it any better now? Let me know. I may move this up a little bit. Hear it a little better. Let me know if that's any better or if it's not. We notice that we have the node modules and they are grayed out because they're being ignored in the .gitignore file. We have the public directory, which is where we would store any static data that needs to be. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And thanks for keeping me on my toes and giving me some feedback. I appreciate it, my brother. We have a .gitignore file, which is where we'll place any files that we want to ignore from being uploaded to Git. The ESLint configuration, which will come into play once we are ready to deploy the project. The package lock.json and the package.json. This is kind of the brain of the application where all of the dependencies and modules that we have installed are going to be listed in the package.json, and these specific versions of each are going to be inside of the package lock. The post CSS configuration, this is just letting us know or distinguishing that we're using Tailwind as our CSS configuration for the project. We have a README file where we can document out the progress of how we're installing everything, or just notes that we want to leave. And then we have our TypeScript configuration as well. So let's go ahead and begin to set up our code. What's up, big boy? She had to step out to go run some errands for somebody's big day, you know. Yes, sir. You spoke to GG and Elder White? Okay. All right. The first thing I want to do is distinguish the package manager that we'll be using within the project. I'm going to set the package manager to 10.5.2 because I want to make sure any modules or dependencies that we install are compatible with Git. Let's get compatible with Git. Sorry, I want to make sure any modules that we install are compatible with Next, with the latest version. Not all of the dependencies play well with the latest version of Next, but if we distinguish the package manager, that will take care of that. And I also included some overrides for React, React DOM, and Next as well. So if we click save on this, we're just about ready to spin up the app just to make sure it's working. We'll head to the page.tsx. We'll notice that there's already some code listed within this file. This is the boiler code provided by Next. What we'll do to start out with a clean slate is I'm just going to remove the divs that are listed within its return statement. We'll add a new div and just enclose a quick message of homepage. So we'll have some text to display on screen, and we can remove the image from next image since we won't be using it. Now, if we go back into the project directory inside of the app folder, click on global.css, we'll notice that we have some default styling listed on screen. I'm going to remove that because we'll be adding our own styling. And the first thing I want to do within this file is set the overall height and width of the page, just so that as we code out or as we add different Tailwind stylings, the height of the window will be set to the full height of the screen and the width will be the full viewport as well. And it's a little easier to kind of manage and maneuver. So the way I'm going to do it is add the body, HTML, the root, and add.app. This is going to target all of the main elements or main tags within the React application. And as I mentioned, we'll just set the height to 100%, the width to 100%. We'll set the overflow on the x-axis to hidden. That way it won't be able to move so much from side to side. And I also like to apply a distinguished size to the text of small. Just makes it a little, to me, it makes it a little easier to read, but you don't have to do that if it's anything pertinent to the actual app. So we'll go ahead and close this global CSS file out for right now. And let's go spin up the application just to make sure everything is working. So back in the terminal, if you type the command npm run dev and press enter, that's going to spin up the app on localhost. And you'll notice because I'm in a virtual environment, I have a virtual IDE, I'm going to have to launch it from this specific link, which is the local host. So I'll just click on control if you're a Windows user and the actual link. If you're using a traditional editor that is saved on your desktop with the project, then you don't have to worry about that step. You can just go to localhost 3000 and it'll work just fine. I just need to take that additional step because I'm using a virtual environment. So once we launch this on our local host, we'll notice that it is working properly. Just to test it out real quick, I'll close out the terminal and we'll add a quick route just to make sure that it routes as designed. So within the app directory, we know that Next.js uses a folder-based routing system. All we need to do is create a folder and add a page.tsx file, and it's going to automatically route, or it's going to create a route that we can utilize within the project. So I'm just going to create a directory named test, and inside of it, add a file named page.tsx. I'm going to use the shortcut, the React snippet of RAFCE, which will create a arrow function that we can export. Since I have the 3 pages highlighted, I'm just going to backspace to delete it and name this export const named test page, just so we have something. Click save. If I go back to the React app and add the route of test, we see that we get test page. So we notice that everything is working properly with the project. The application is routing as we want. Now we're ready to go ahead and get started with building something a little more useful. So the first thing I want to do, because this is going to be a quick project and I want to focus on the CRUD capability first before any styling, I'm going to go ahead and install Prisma, which is the ORM that we'll be using to interact with our Vercel Postgres Neon database. I think it's the correct name for it now. So within the terminal, we'll stop the one that was previously running and we'll just create a new terminal. We'll type the command npm -d Prisma and press enter. This is going to install Prisma as a development dependency. Yes, good morning. Yes, just a simple, quick CRUD application using the latest version of Next. We'll be using Prisma as the ORM and we'll be interacting with a Postgres Neon Vercel database, and that is the database we'll be using is on Vercel. So I'll walk you through setting that up just in a moment. But we're installing Prisma right now. But thank you so much for stopping by. It means a lot. I appreciate it. Yep. Yeah, today I got a few things to do. Kid birthdays. My oldest is gone off to college, so just to take my mind off everything and before my day gets away from me and it gets a little dictated from me, if you will, just coding a quick CRUD app that's serving as the backend for the student tracker that we're building. I showed the dashboard of it a little early on, and I actually could pull it up right now. Give me a moment just so you can see what it looks like. Hold on 1 second. It looked a little funky last time I did it, but let me make sure there are no issues with it. So this is the actual tracker that we'll be building eventually. This is the UI of it. It doesn't have all of the functionality that I'm going to add just yet, and some of the styling is off, but I want to at least build a preliminary view of what it will look like. And then for today's video, we're at least going to have the ability to add a new student and also display all students. And we're going to display them in this little card layout with a unique design, if you will. Nothing too complicated, but ultimately what I want this to do is to serve as an actual project that you'll use in the event that you need to keep track of multiple events with children. You can use this as a quick way to keep up with the events that are coming up, and also any any after school activities, grades, classes, teachers, things of that sort. And we'll build on additional functionality as we go out. But for today, I just want to establish the crud functionality and what it looks like. But this is the project itself. And if we go to slash students, this view should give us, I think I built it. Yep, this view is going to give us all of the students that we have created. And like I said, it's still, this is just a UI demo, so it doesn't have real functionality just yet. But if you click add child, it'll take you to a new window and you can add the child name and their grade, and then you click save. And once you do that, it'll redirect you back to the home view. And but here's a view of all students. This is just a grid layout, have a border for the platform and rounded the edges a little bit. We may tweak that. I don't know if I necessarily like that or not, but for right now, what to do. But we'll go back to our project. So with Prisma installed, next we want to install the client, and that will be npm I at Prisma clients, and press enter. Give it a minute or two to install. And just to make sure I'm not going crazy, make sure I type that in correctly. I think it is at Prisma client. Let me just copy it just to be sure. It is perfect. It has installed. So with that, we're ready to initialize Prisma. And the command that we'll use to do that is npx prisma init, and press enter. And once this command is finished installing, we'll have a directory named Prisma with a schema.prisma file. Within that file, that's where we'll store all of our models. For today's video, we're just going to create the one model, but eventually we're going to have multiple models. But to make sure that those Prisma dependencies installed, let's go to the package.json and we'll take a look. So if we notice within the development dependencies, we have @/Prisma, and it's using version 6.13.0. And if we go to dev dependencies, we'll notice that we have Prisma installed, and it is also using, version 6.13.0. So perfect, installed just as we desired. So now we're ready to, we notice that we also have a schema.prisma file, and I'm going to remove the output, run into an error with that. I haven't had a lot of time to look into it just yet, but if you remove it, it should work just fine. Before we set up the schema, let's go to Vercel and create a storage. So Vercel is the database that I'll be using for today's project. You can use any database that you want. It just requires a few minor tweaks within the code. It's free to set up a Vercel account, and I think they give maybe 1 or 2 deployments at no cost. After that, you will have to pay a fee if you wish to use more than what's allowed with the free tier of service. So just kind of keep that in mind. But you're more than welcome to use any ORM. You shouldn't have any issues with following along with this project if you decide to use a different ORM or database, or if you just decide to go with MongoDB and Prisma, it should work just fine. You just may have to make a few minor tweaks. If you have any questions, just let me know, but it should be a fairly simple process. So once you're logged in, click on storage, and we're going to create a database. And as I mentioned, we'll be using Neon serverless Postgres. Click on that, click continue. The region that we're going to select should be the one that's closest to you. And once you've done that, as I mentioned, this is going to be a free plan. No credit card is required. You click continue. You'll be redirected and asked to name the database. Doesn't matter what you name it. Feel free to name your application whatever you want. But I'm just going to name this one my live crud app, and click create. And then once it's provisioned and set up, you should get a message that your database created successfully. Then click done. And you'll be redirected to the individual storage window where you can see the name of the application. You have the ability to connect the project to it. You can open in Neon. We won't worry about any of that. The key things I'm looking for is the status. It's currently available, saying that it is just created. The plan is set to free. And the period total is the C installation, which we shouldn't be too concerned with that right now. We just set it up. But what I want to do from this window is capture the environment variables that we need to store within the project. That's what's going to give us the ability to communicate back with our Next.js application and to know which individual database that we'll be utilizing to store our data. Yes, yes, I appreciate it. Just a simple CRUD application using the latest version of Next, Prisma, Vercel, and it is going to be connected to a Postgres Neon Vercel database. We may deploy this, but I'm really just building out the functionality of the dashboard or the student tracking application that I'm working on right now. I intend to use this as an actual app that will allow me to keep up with all of the various events that my kids have going on. And this can be something that's versatile that you can use for yourself or for a teacher or for anyone that needs to just kind of keep track of various events. I named it students, but I could name it member or person, and you can name it whatever you want. But basically what I have is just an application that's going to allow me to have a quick view of some stats. And I chose to see how many children I have set up, today's events, the average grade of those students combined, and how many open items that we have. I have a calendar that I coded out from hand. You know, there are different services that you can use to integrate, but I decided that, hey, wouldn't it be fun just to build my own? So just built the daily view that goes from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we can toggle in between days. If you click on today, it'll default back to today. From there, if we scroll down, we have the list of students, and I think I'm going to move this up top, and we may work on this portion today. Here we have a progress view within the dashboard that allows us to see how the individual child is doing in their classes and what type of progress they've made. And then we can also see recent activities that may be coming up. One student, Ava, has a math quiz, Eli has soccer practice, and there's a new lesson posted of science under Volcano Lab or something like that. But that's ultimately what we're going to get to. But for today, I'm just focusing on the CRUD functionality of it to make sure the functionality works, and we'll come back and hit the design at a later point. But yeah, that's all that we're building today. Thank you so much for asking. Yep. So what we'll do now, I'll go back to Vercel. I want to copy these environment variables and store them within our project. So we'll click on the copy snippet icon. And before we upload or we add this to the .env, I'm just going to make sure it's included in our .gitignore. That way it is not uploaded to Git once we upload this project. So we click on .gitignore, we'll add .env, we'll click save. And with that, it should be included in the gitignore. Now we'll go back to .env. I'm just going to highlight everything that's within this file, paste in the code that we just copied, click save, close it out. So with that, we are now ready to shift our focus to building out the schema, the models to organize the data within the project. For today's application, we're not going to build everything that is included, but we are going to at least establish the CRUD functionality and maybe a couple of the routes. That way we can have some of that functionality in place, and then we'll come back and style it at a later point. But for right now, let's go ahead and focus on building out the model first. Hello, hello, good morning. I appreciate you stopping by. Just building a quick CRUD application using the latest version of Next. Yes. So it is a student tracker application. That way we can keep track. That way we can keep track of the students that we want to keep up with for one reason or another. Correct. Uh, what's going on, brother? Why not actual VS Code? Oh, because I need to save some storage on my computer. I've been having some computer issues, man, and part of the reason I haven't been able to upload traditional videos as frequently as I would like because I've been having some computer issues. So what I'm doing is using a virtual IDE, so these files aren't installed on my desktop, but they are installed in a virtual environment. And then once I'm ready to add it to my actual desktop, I'll be able to do that rather easily just by downloading the project, installing all the dependencies. I may have to make one tweak to my .env file, but then at that point, I'll have everything I need to get going. But that's basically why. Great question. Great question. Yep. But this is this is gonna be just a quick CRUD application. Nothing too complicated. Yes. Yeah, change it up a little bit. Not your traditional my traditional stuff of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I know I upload quite a bit of that content, but I figured for a live wouldn't be a bad idea just to kind of interact and spend some time and answer questions and just work on a couple things that I have going on personally. Yep. So look, yeah, that's what I'm here for. Yeah, I'm building this application, but if you have any questions, look, stop me. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have and clarify anything. And
What makes someone's
I'm always open to feedback. So if you have a better or more efficient way to get something done than what I'm doing, look, don't hesitate to share the knowledge, man. That's what we're here to do, is to help each other and to get better. Certainly don't assume that I know everything, because I don't. Yep. All right. So let's go ahead and shift our focus to building out the actual model to to organize the student data. As I mentioned, we're using Prisma, and I won't be building out all of the models because we're going to have multiple, and this is just intended to be a quick CRUD app. But we will jump in and add a few, or just the one with some of the additional properties that we want to store. So I think for today we'll just do I think for today we'll just do a CRUD app with the model of student. We'll include the name, what time we created it, what time we updated it, just that way it's nothing too challenging. And then later on we can always come back and add a little bit more to it. But I think for right now this will be suffice. So let's jump in, and we'll start with the keyword of model. Next, we'll need to name this model. I'm going to name it student. We'll give it a ID of string, and this is going to be automatically incremented by Prisma. So we'll go at ID at default. Inside of default, we'll go CUID. Be sure to call it. Then we'll include a name, which will be a string, and I want that to be required. If not, we would just include a question mark. And as I mentioned, we'll also want to store when this was created. We'll go date time, and it will be created. The default for it will be now. So we'll say at default and then pass in now. We'll also have updated at, so that once we update the model, we can store that time within the database. And we'll go date time object, and we'll go add updated app, click save. So with this, we have the model that we need in order to organize the data within the application. Next up, we'll need to have a function that will run whenever we intend to make a connection or grab the model. We want to have a function that can, number one, check to see if there's a connection already in place, because if there is, we just want to use it. And if there's not a connection already in place, we'll look to establish one. The other cool thing about this, because we're using the Prisma client, we'll get access to the schema and the models throughout the project so that we can make changes in the application, and we'll get access to it without having to type out all of the code. So within the root of our project, sorry, wrong shortcut. Let's add a directory named lib, and inside of it, a file named prisma.ts. I'm just going to paste in a function, and I captured this function from the off.js documentation. It's the exact same thing. You don't really have to memorize this code. You can always just capture it from a source to keep it simple. But basically what this is a function that will run to check if there's a connection already established to Prisma. If there is, we're going to utilize it. If there isn't, we're going to establish one. And here's that code listed here. Set up the Prisma instance to ensure only one instance is created throughout the project, and then import it from any file that's needed. This approach avoids recreating instances of the Prisma client every time it is used. Finally, we can import the Prisma instance into the off.ts file. So we're not setting up authentication at this point, but we do want to utilize this function that, as written, basically just checks for a connection. If there's a connection, we'll use it. If there's not a connection, then we're going to establish one, just to make sure we don't have a bunch of instances of the client running on the computer. So with that, we're ready to push these changes to Vercel, our database. So within the terminal, the first thing we'll need to do is migrate these changes, and we'll use the command npx prisma migrate dev and press enter. Give it a moment. I'm going to name this migration init. And let's see, it should be in sync. To test it out, we're going to launch the Prisma Studio. It's a little easier. It's a much better interface to view what's in your database versus using Vercel. So we'll just type the command npx prisma studio and press enter. And with that, you notice that we have the student model. Within the student model, we have the field of ID, name, created at, and updated at. So that's absolutely perfect. So now we are ready to spin our application back up. We'll go back to, we'll make sure that's public. We'll go back to the first terminal, and to run the Next.js app, we'll just type the command npm run dev and press enter. I'll close this out for right now. And here's a quick, simple preview of it. Of homepage, but I think I also have it up right here. And we'll go back to the home route just to make sure it's working perfect. We see we have homepage on screen. Okay. So now we are ready to shift our focus to building out the CRUD capability of the app. And I like to start with the back end first. And this is because we're using server actions in the latest version of, because we're using the latest version of Next.js, we're going to take advantage of a feature that it has named server actions versus building out the traditional APIs. And the actions that I want to store within this directory are going to be to create, which we'll use the action for that. Update, that's going to give us to update, it's going to allow us, excuse me, to update the student. Create will give us the ability to create a student, and delete, of course, will be to delete the student. So to create these, we won't be storing them in the app directory, we'll actually store them in the lib directory. And you know what, I think now's a good time to go ahead and push these initial changes to Git versus just allowing them to continue to pile up. So you could do this from the terminal, but because I'm using VS Code, I'm going to use a shortcut feature here in order to push these changes. So if you click on source code and you come up to the three dots for more actions, we'll click on branch, create branch. The name of this branch is going to be 01 setup. You know what? Let's do this instead. I don't want to merge, I'm sorry. Actually, I don't need to do that yet. We can just name this setup here in this field, and then we'll click commit, and it's going to commit these to the initial branch. I forgot I didn't set up a main branch or anything in the main branch first, but I'm not going to worry about gitpod periodically doing the git fetch. I'll manually do it. And just to make sure that this worked, let's go back to our Git repo, JADAD repository, live Git tracker, and we see the application set up here that we just push changes from Gitpod to GitHub. So perfect. It has everything listed there. And just to confirm, if we go to app, we have the test route that we created, and we have page.tsx of homepage. So perfect. All right, so now we'll close this out. Now we'll shift our focus to establishing the actions that we'll be using to interact with our backend database. So within the lib directory, let's add a folder named actions. The first directory we'll add will be for student. This is where we're going to store all of the student actions. And then the next will be events. So inside of the actions folder, which is inside of lib, you should have two directories. The first is student, and outside of that, it should be events. And these should not be inside of each other. They should actually be inside of actions. So the first functionality I want to establish for this CRUD app is to create a student. So inside of the student folder, let's add a file named student.ts. Okay. Because we're using server actions and we want to access this outside of this specific file, we need to start with the use server directive at the top, and this will give us the ability to access this in a server component or client component. We'll begin by importing Prisma, and that should be coming from may need to manually type it out. First, we're going to bring in import Prisma, and that should be coming from @/lib/Prisma. Then we'll need to use revalidate path. This is going to allow us to revalidate the data that we're getting from the server every time we make a change or every time we update the server, kind of giving it a real-time experience, if you will, but we'll include suspense for a loading state as the project grows. It will take a little more time to fetch and load data. And then last but not least, we're going to import redirect. Once the student is created from the new student page, we want to redirect the user back to the home dashboard route. And that's what we're using redirect from next navigation for. So now we're ready to create the actual function that's going to serve as the server action. And we'll use a export async function. We're going to name this create student. We'll need to pass in form data because we're using type safety, and we should be getting form data. We're using TypeScript, not type safety, excuse me. Then we'll have a promise of void, void. Inside of this function, we'll start with a try catch block. We'll need to capture the name, and we'll store it in a const name, and that data is going to come from form data.get. The name of the input should be name itself. Then we'll say if the type of name does not equal a string, or we get a name with a empty field. So we'll use .trim to capture and identify any white spaces. We want to throw a new error back to the user indicating that that is a invalid student name. This is just saying that if we get a blank response from the user, or we get a numerical value or anything other than a string, we want to kick that back to the user saying, hey, this isn't valid. We're not going to be able to store it. Please try again. But if we do get valid data from the user, at that point, we want to establish the connection to Prisma. And that should be, we're using what we imported just a moment ago. Then we'll need after we press dot, we should see everything that we have access to from the Prisma client. You see that we have access to disconnect, transaction, extends, query raw, unsafe, execute raw, unsafe. But what we want is student, which is going to represent that student model that we created. And then we'll be using one of the fields or the methods from Prisma, and we'll be using create to create a new user. We'll pass in an object of data, and that data is going to represent the actual name. Inside of the catch portion, if we get an error, we want to log it to the console, and we'll just say error creating user, or creating student, excuse me. Come outside of the string at a plus mark and then include error. But if everything goes well, we want to revalidate the path so that we're revalidating the data. And we also want to redirect the user from the create page to the home page or any specific route. For this project, I'm going to redirect them back to the home route. So with that, that basically establishes the ability to create a student. This is the exact same thing, or the equivalent of what a API post route would be that you would traditionally do in a API request. But because we're using Next.js and taking advantage of server actions, we won't have to worry about utilizing the traditional API route. So with the ability to create, establish, let's now shift our focus to updating the user. So inside of the lib directory, inside of actions and student, we'll add a file named update student.ts. So you can see. And we actually can copy the exact same imports that we have for create student. And I'm just going to paste those in to update because they're the same. And a lot of this code is going to be the exact same. There's just going to be a couple minor tweaks, but we'll go ahead and talk through it as we build it out. So we want a export async function. We're going to name this update student. We'll need to pass in the form data. We'll include promise, void. Okay. Inside of this function, we'll add a try-catch block. From the form data, we want to establish or destructure or capture the ID. So that will be form data dot get, and what we want to get is the name of that input field, which we'll name it ID. And we'll also want to capture the name. So the syntax will be the same. We'll store it in a const name and we form data dot get, and what we're getting is the name. And we also want to have the same validation that we had within the create student. So we'll just copy this validation, paste it into update. This cares for the name, but we also need to validate the actual ID. So I'm going to paste it in one more time. And instead of it saying type of for name, I'm just going to change the name to ID and also do it within the or statement there. So now this is saying that if we get an ID that isn't a string or it's blank, we want to throw back to the student that it is an invalid name, which we should be caring for this on the back end, but it's just for validation purposes. And I won't show this to the actual user, but we will show this to the user later on once we include, we'll either do it manually to have a update or some sort of notification, or I may use something like Zod or some form of validation to kind of help with that. But for right now, this will be suffice. Then we'll create a const name existing student. We'll set it equal to await Prisma. And as previously, Prisma, this is utilizing that Prisma function that we established earlier. We want the student model. And first we need to find unique, because we need to find that unique user where the ID mirrors the ID that we captured from the form data. Once we have that established, well, first, let's care for if it isn't available. So we'll say if there is no existing student, we want to throw a new error indicating that student was not found. Again, this is something that shouldn't take place on the user side, but just in case, we want to make sure we care for validation always. And then if we have the existing user, we want to establish that connection to Prisma and say await Prisma dot student. And the method we want to use from Prisma is update. So we'll say update. Inside of this object, we'll say where the ID matches and where the data matches name, because we could be updating the ID or name, although we typically won't update the ID, but we just want to care for it and make sure we can or have access to it just in case some reason we want to. In the event we get an error, we'll console.log it and we'll say error updating student. I don't know why I want to say user. And pass in the error, that way we can see it in the terminal. If all goes well, we're going to use revalidate validate path. And for this one, we'll redirect the user as well, because we're going to have the ability to update, I think, on a specific page. So this looks good. This is the server action to update a user, replacing a patch or put request, depending upon your project. Traditional API route, we're just using server actions in its place. The final action I want to create is the ability to delete a student. So if we go back to the root of the project, inside of the lib folder, actions, student, inside of student, let's add a file named delete student.ts. As previous, we're going to copy the exact same imports, which will include Prisma and just revalidate path. We'll also need to make sure we have the use server directive at the top, because we intend to use this outside of this file, and it could be used in a client component at a later date. And to create this function, we'll create a export async function named delete student. I'm going to pass in form data. Excuse me. We'll include promise. Set that to void. We'll need a try catch block. Inside of it, from the form data, we want to capture the ID. This will be form data.get, and we're passing the ID. And then if we're going to care for that same validation, instead of retyping it out, I'm just going to copy it. If we get a ID, this is just saying if we happen to get an ID that isn't a type of string, or it's an empty space, we want to throw an error in the event. But if everything goes perfect, we'll go await Prisma dot student, which is the model, and we're going to access the Prisma method of delete. And then what we're deleting is where the ID matches. If we get an error or something goes wrong, we'll be sure to log it to the console. Deleting student. But all should go well, and we'll just revalidate the path. So we're revalidating the data. That student is being removed immediately, kind of giving it that real-time feel, if you will, where the student will be removed immediately from the project. So with that, we have the ability, we have all of our server actions in place, which is taking the place of traditional APIs. Now we're ready to use these actions within the project that we haven't built just yet, so that we have the ability to create, update, delete, and get, which will give us all CRUD functionality for the students. So let's go ahead and focus on that now. How's everyone doing? Hope everyone's doing well. Just building a simple CRUD application using the latest version of Next. We're going to have a student tracker. Ultimately, this is a rough sample of the UI that I've been working on. And of course, we'll make some tweaks to it and make sure that it's responsive and all the modern features. But basically what we have is a home route or a dashboard route where we can see the amount of students, events that we have for the day, the average grade of all students, and any open items that we may have. We've included a daily calendar view. It's defaulting to today. And I don't have this one running, so it wouldn't show. Hold on one second. Let me get that back going. Sorry about that. Spinning it up right now. I'm in a virtual environment, and if you don't use it, it times out, just kind of save space. The reason I'm doing this is because my computer has been acting up, and I've been wanting to code a actual project, but I've been having some issues with it storing locally on my desktop. So I figured if I used a virtual IDE, that can kind of alleviate my issue, and I can still kind of share things that I'm building with everyone that may be interested in it. So let me just get this spent back up, and it's back up now. So I was saying that we have a daily calendar view where we can toggle between days, and as we add events, we'll have those listed here so we can see them. And here's a view of all students that we have. Just a simple card with the student name, their grade, what room they're in at the moment, their grade, average, and the next class that they have up. The individual view, if you click on a student, you see we have Eli Dunbar. He's enrolled, the classes he's enrolled in is Math 5A, Science 6B. His recent grades are listed here, 85 out of 100, not bad, but not great. And this is basically what the project will look like, minus some additional features and some cleanup, but that's That's the user interface. What we're focusing on right now is the actual functionality, the CRUD capability. So since we've just updated the server actions, I think I'm going to push those to, I'm going to create a separate branch for those now. Server actions. All right. And then server actions added. CRUD server actions added. CRUD server actions added. And we'll go with commit. And we'll push this. I'm not going to worry about a pull request just yet, but I will eventually. Let me click save. Updated. I see it's looking for the pull request, which will basically migrate the changes that we just made to the main branch. But I have the separate server actions and I can see the lib directory. And if I change it from server actions back to main, you no longer see actions within lib and students. You just see what we had on the initial branch. So perfect. That's working as well. So let's go ahead and set up the CRUD functionality. I like to organize the folders or the routes within one specific folder so I can have multiple layouts if needed. The way we'll go about doing that with Next is by wrapping the name of the grouping in parentheses. So inside of app, we'll add a parentheses around website and press enter. And what I want to do first is move the main page.tsx into that website grouping. So now we have page.tsx within that grouping. And just to make sure nothing broke, if we go back to the application and refresh the page, we still see home page on the screen. Now I want to add a specific layout outside of this layout file. This is the main layout within the application. And I want to keep this clean with just shared access to things that's needed, maybe like a toast notification or something else down the line. And I'm going to have a specific layout that's going to be just for the website grouping. Right now, what I'm doing is just copying the TypeScript React Node code so I don't have to retype it into the layout. But if we go back into the website grouping and add a file named layout.tsx, we'll then add the RFCE snippet to add a React arrow function that we can export. We'll keep layout as is. Inside of the parentheses, just paste in the TypeScript children configuration that we copied from the main layout. And then inside of layout, or excuse me, inside of return statement, inside of div, remove the text layout, add a children that's enclosed with parentheses. And just to make sure that we don't have any issues with this, we'll go back. You see we're getting the error because we weren't exporting it previously, but if we refresh the page, it's working perfectly. And I'll say hello from new layout. This should be displayed at the top or above the homepage text. And we see that listed there. And just to make sure that there's no issues with this, if we go to the /test route, we should have a totally different, we shouldn't see hello from the new layout because this is within its own website grouping and test was not included in that website grouping. So we won't see hello from the new layout text within the test page. So perfect. Everything is working just as we hope. So now I want to add a few routes so that we can go ahead and get access to creating a child and adding it within sorry, give me 1 second. Uh-oh. Yeah. All right. What's up, Pops? Ain't nothing much, man. How you doing? Uh, uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. Not yet. Okay. 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 So I, yeah. Understood. What you think? You think just wait on him, you thinking, or you think Buddy what was Buddy Scott, the one that we just went to? Okay. Not Scott, but you know what I'm talking about. Okay. Cause he was saying Milton, that's it. Cause he was saying that they'll take another look at it and take it off for what I already paid. So okay. Okay. Cool. Well then I'll get it told to him. I'll get it told to him and just let him know what's going on and see if he can take care of it for me. That'll work. Appreciate it, Pops. I, okay, I sure will. Yes, sir. All right. Nah, we got Jack today. Y- You good? Okay, yes, sir. That'll work. All right, Pops, be easy out there now. All right, later. All right, sorry about that. All right, so let's go ahead and begin by creating these routes to kind of help us with setting up this application. So the first route is going to be to create a new student. And what I want is inside of the website grouping, I'm going to add a directory named student. And then inside of it, we're going to add another folder named new. And we'll add a file named page.tsx. Yes. All right, we'll use the RAFCE snippet, and we're going to name this component new student page and press save. To make sure that it's working, we're going to test this route out, and we're just going to go to /student/new. We'll remove test and go /student/new, press enter. And we can see we have the text of hello from the new layout. And we also have the new student page. So that's perfect. The next route that I want to create inside of student, we'll add another folder. This is going to be a dynamic route that'll give us the ability to update the student. So to create a dynamic route, remember I told you to create a grouping, you use parentheses, but to create a dynamic route, you use brackets. And the dynamic data that we're going to be passing in is the ID, because that could change based upon the student. So we're just going to add an open bracket, the text ID, then a close bracket. And then inside of the ID, we're going to add a file named page.tsx. We'll use the RAFCE snippet to create a functional component. And this particular page, we're going to name it update student page. Press enter. Let's test this route out. Remove the text of new, and we'll just add a number. At this point, it doesn't matter. We'll press enter, and then we see we still have the text of hello from new layout, and also we're on the update student page. The ability to get all posts, we're going to just keep on the home page for right now, but eventually we'll add a all student route, and the ability to delete will be within the home page as well. So let's go ahead and focus on creating a new student first. Inside of the new student page, we're going to remove the current div and I'll replace it with the new div. We'll come back and style this later, but just so that you can see it a little better on the screen, I'm going to give it a class name with padding on the X of 4. We'll just go padding on the X for right now. We'll add a form, which is what we'll be using to submit the data. We do need to import the server action. So we'll go import, and what we're importing is create student. Be sure to enclose it in curly braces. If you didn't, it will. And this should be coming from @lib/actions student, then create student. Inside of the form, we're going to add the keyword of action, and we're going to pass in create student. In the input field, we'll add a ID. Remember, we named this input, we named the data that we're going to be getting name. So the ID needs to be named. We're going to set the name to name. We'll give it a placeholder, and we'll say new student name, 3 dots, and I'll just enclose the input. If we check it out and we go to new student we go to student/new, you'll see that we have an input of the input field with new student. Then we need a way to submit this data, and we'll add a button to care for that. Inside of the button, we'll just say add or create new student, create new student. We'll also set the button type to submit, just to distinguish it. It should work automatically, but we just want to make sure that it does work. So with this is how you create a quick action using a server action to create a new student. That's all the text that we need. All we'll need to do at this point is to submit this, and it should create a new student within our database just with this code. Nothing else is needed. So let's test it out. As you can see, we have the new student listed here. And I'm just going to add the first student, which is Jace, which represents my oldest. What should happen once we click create new student, it should revalidate the data and redirect us back to the /home route. So I'll go ahead and click create student. Notice it redirected us back to the home page as we intended. Let's check to make sure that the data did get updated within the database. So we'll click on the Prisma Studio, and we can just refresh this page. We have the unique ID that's being created by Prisma. We have the student name of Jace that we added, and we can see the updated and created at time listed there. So that server action is working perfect. Now to display those actions, I could have created a separate action within the actions folder, but for right now, I'm just going to use or display that data on the home page. So I'm not showing it in multiple locations as of yet. To display it, we need to mark this as a asynchronous file because we're going to be using a server action within it. So we'll go export default async function. The function name will remain home. We'll create a const name students and set it equal to await. And we need to import the Prisma connection. So we'll say import Prisma, and that should be coming from @/lib. May not see it in the drop, might have passed it. It's okay. From @/lib/Prisma. Yeah. So we'll say await Prisma, and this should be .student because we want the student model, and we'll be using the find many method. So we'll call it and pass in a empty object. Actually, you know what? We're using TypeScript, so we need to do this a little differently. Let me think about this one for a second, because if I recall the last time, because we're not, I haven't distinguished all of the fields for type safety purposes. I need to do it a little differently. It should be students, and then we'll import student directly, and that should be coming from @/Prisma, and then just pass in a empty array. This way we won't get any errors within the displaying of our students. I'm going to remove the home page and pass in another div and give it a class name with padding on the X of 4. And for right now, let's utilize JavaScript so we can use .map to map over the students. And for each one, we want to display something on screen. We'll add a div. Give it a key of student.id. And just to make sure this is working, I'm gonna add another div and pass in student.name. If we click save, go back to the home page, we see Jace listed on screen. The next server action or action I want to include is the ability to update the student. And remember, I want to redirect this student to the specific student ID page. To help us with the routing, I'm going to utilize link. So we'll import link, and that should be coming from next/link. Inside of this div, give me 1 second. All right, sorry about that. I'm going to remove this student name and add a new div. I'll paste back in the student name. Uh-oh, I could just add it. I guess it didn't copy. Student.name. Inside of the outer div, I'll give it a class name of flex, item centered, and we'll say space on the X of 4. Outside of that div, let's add another div. I'm sorry, let's not add another div. Let's bring in the link. Inside of link, we'll just say update, and it needs a href to redirect us to that specific page. So we'll say href. We'll need to pass in some dynamic data. So of course we use temporal literals to help us with that. The route that we want to go to is /student/ID. And remember, the ID needs to be enclosed in curly braces. And in front of the curly braces, we need the $sign. So we'll say student.id, but make sure you have it enclosed in the curly braces. And before the curly braces, you actually have the $sign. Let's make sure that this redirect is working. So if we go back to the project, we see update on screen. And I'm going to just click on update, and it redirected us to the update student page. And notice in the params, we have the ID of that student. Let's make sure that matches what's in the database. So the last 3 characters are H, Q, and 7. And if we go back to this Prisma Studio, it is HQ7, so that's perfect. So on this page, this is where I want to have the ability to update the student. And we'll need to do a couple things before we have the ability to do that. Nothing too heavy, but we need to capture the params from the URL and display that data on screen. 1 second. Yes, hold on. What you need? All right. Sorry about that. All right. So let's work on this layout just a little bit. HID. I'm going to remove this div and replace it with another div, of course. Inside of it, I'll add one more. We'll give some padding on the X of 4. And we'll go update student page. Click save. All right, we see we the padding. So the main things I need to do is capture the ID using params from this particular URL. And we will go ahead and add one more server action within the lib directory. This one will give us the ability to capture the ID, excuse me, to find the individual student by its ID. And it's going to be the exact same code that we use for to delete, because if you recall, not to delete, but to update, if you recall, we have it within the code, but because I'm displaying it on screen, I need to make sure that we have that individual student on screen and not just have it updated within the update function. So within the lib directory, within actions, within student, let's add a file named get student by id.ts. With this one, we do need to mark it as use server with the directive at the top. we're going to import Prisma, and that's going to come from @/lib/Prisma. Then we'll just create a export async function. We're going to name this get student by ID. We'll pass in form data. Include the promise with void. And I got an extra bracket in there, sorry. We do need the try catch block, of course. And we'll just say, as we did, const ID is equal to form data dot get. And what we're getting is the ID. Actually, you know what? I could do this one a little differently because we're not getting form data. I'm sorry, let's remove that. We'll go export const get student by ID and set it equal to async. All we need to pass in is the ID. And if I recall, we're capturing it from the param. So we're not getting it from form data where we're going to just pass it in to this function. And we'll include the try catch. And we'll just say const result, result, is equal to await prisma dot student dot find unique, and it is where the ID is equal to the ID. And I think with this one, we can just return it because we need to send it back to the browser. We'll just return result. And if we get an error, we'll go console.log error getting student. And we'll just go error, click save. Now let's go ahead and bring this into the update student page or individual student page. I probably should have named it individual versus update, but we can always come back and change it later on. No big deal there. We're going to mark this page as async. And of course, we're going to pass in params. And we'll say the params that we're going to be getting is the ID. We'll go params ID, and that will be a string. And then inside of the function, we'll go const, we'll destructure the ID. And I believe with next now you have to await params. I typically get an error whenever I try to pass it without, or a warning, I should say, in the terminal. And then we'll say const student is going to be equal to await get student by ID. And I know we didn't import it, but if you begin to type it out, that function name, it'll automatically import it from its location. And then with this, remember, we just need to pass in the ID itself. We'll care for any errors potentially. We're saying that if there's no student, we're going to return a div that reads student not found. Click save. All right, and just to make sure that this is working, let's bring in the update student action. So we'll go import update student from @/lib, and then we'll remove this. We'll go form inside of the action. Actually, you know what? Yeah. We'll go update student, and I actually can pass in this input with the ID of ID, name of ID, and we'll go default value will be student.id. We'll make, let me make sure this is showing up. We'll click save, and we see the student's ID listed there. Perfect. But I want this hidden because I know the user wouldn't want to see that information. That's not very aesthetically appealing, nor is it really relevant for the end user. We'll add another input. The ID for this one will be name. The name will be name. The default value is going to be student.name. I think we can close that, and then we'll add a button with a type of submit, and we'll just say update student. Click save. Let's check it out. So we see the student's name listed there. We see the button to update. Let's just say I want to change the student name to a different student, which will be Jada, another one of my students or kids, if you will. We'll click update, and what should happen, we should get, the data should be revalidated, and we should be redirected back to the home route if everything goes successfully. Otherwise, we'll check the terminal for an error. We'll click update, and you can see it took us back to the home route. The name is now showing Jada, not Jace. So let's go back, and I'll change it from Jada to Jace. Click update student. Perfect. Let's add another student. We'll go student new. I'll add Jada, and we see we have 2 students listed there. Let's just add a link to it so we don't have to keep clicking that. I'll go right here. We have link, give it a href of /student/new. We'll add new student button listed there. Click save, and we see we have the new student button listed. And I'll just add a random student so I can delete it. I'll name this one Stanks, and we'll click create new student. And we see that we have 3 students listed here: Jace, Jada, Stanks. Now the only action that we need to include that we haven't built quite just yet is the ability to delete. So inside of this div, excuse me, underneath the closing link tag for update, let's add a new div. Inside of that div, we want a form. The action that we're going to pass to that form is going to be delete student. So let's import it. We'll add action delete student. We will need to pass in the ID. So we'll go input. The ID will be ID. The name will be ID. The default value will be student.id. I'll go ahead and close this for right now. Let's add a button. We'll name the button delete. We'll give it a type of submit. And I'm going to make this hidden, but I just want to make sure it's being passed first. We'll go back to the home page, and we can see the IDs now listed for each student. Let's hide this ID. We'll mark it as hidden. And now we only see Jace, Jada, and Stanks. If I click on delete, what should happen? No refreshes, no redirects. It should just immediately delete this additional student. And there you go. And as you can see, it deleted that student with no problem. So that gives us a full CRUD functionality. And that's basically it. That's all you'll need to do if you want to create a simple CRUD application using Next.js, Prisma, Postgres, Vercel as the ORM, and database with Vercel, of course. And that's pretty much it. So in the next video, what we'll do is we'll focus on the styling of this project, maybe adding some more functionality, but certainly focus on how we have this styled, just to make sure that it is styled to our liking and it fits this layout design. So we'll work on the sidebar, the nav bar, the background and maybe the student list, but it may look a little different. So don't hold me to this particular layout. But with that said, if you wanted to deploy this just to get something out on the web really quick, if you go to the, well, first let me let's add a new branch and let's update everything, and we'll need to do a pull request. Well, I tell you what, we'll work on deployment in the next video. I gotta get up and run at this point, so my apologies for being a little more targeted and not as interactive as I usually am on these, but I intend to maybe jump back in later on today, if not today, tomorrow. But hope you enjoy your Saturday, and I see you in the next